So my name is Kelsey Jones-Casey, and I am currently working as a consultant and a researcher, and I help organizations, nonprofits, and public sector agencies with research, program evaluation, and strategy planning, mostly around issues related to climate change, climate justice, land rights in the international space, and also gender equity and racial equity. People who are in positions of decision making, people who are most responsible for emissions, corporations in particular, and also countries, like at a more macro level, countries that are more responsible for climate change. So for me, it's really a way of talking about climate change that is focused on relationships and power and the intersections of those things with one another. And again, for me, it's relationships between people, of course, but it's also our relationship to the land and our relationship to one another. And I think about that a lot as a white person and as a seller person. What does that mean in my experiences? Yeah, I'm really glad that there are people that are focused on technical solutions. That's really important. But I actually think that the most important work is inner transformation, both transformation of personal values, but also a transformation about how we think as a society about what our relationships are with one another and with the land. So, I think that we're a really, first and foremost, a really individualistic society, and I think that is really, that comes from white supremacy culture, it comes from settler colonialism, and it keeps us from identifying collectively with one another, and it keeps us separate from the environment. It's like humans are causing this thing to the environment. It's not we are part of the environment. We are in a relationship. So I think really first and foremost, we need to be thinking about ourselves in relationship with the earth, with other beings, with other people, and break down some of those barriers between us and them. That kind of transformation is really important. Something that I also think a lot about is a world that only has technological solutions to climate change. One example that I use a lot is electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are great. Like if we all drove electric vehicles, we would have fewer emissions. We could really tackle one of the root causes of climate change. But at the same time, I don't want to live in a city where we have the same infrastructure that was built for cars in the 50s and 60s. I want to live in a city where the built environment is focused on people and how we move and how we interact daily. Like I want narrower streets and less traffic so that it's more enjoyable to walk. I'd rather focus our infrastructure on snow removal so that people can get around in the wintertime without cars. More bike infrastructure, more ways to interact with our neighbors. Once you get into a car, you're in a box, and it's like a very individualistic way to think about transportation. So more affordable public transit options for people who can't walk and bike would be fantastic. So I think that we really need to reimagine the ways that we live more than simply focus on technical solutions. We need both. But I think that a lot of the work is dreaming and envisioning what it is that we could have. So I received a grant to do research in Northern Ontario about the mental and emotional impacts of climate change on people who live close to the land. So the idea is that there are all kinds of observed changes that people are experiencing in their home environment, whether that is warmer winters, less consistent ice on lakes, increased wind, and then those changes or those observed changes have an impact on daily activities. So for example, people are less able to go ice fishing, which for some might be a recreational activity, but for others it's part of their cultural identity. Like for Indigenous people, it's part of their traditions and their culture and their lineage and a set of values. There are all kinds of other impacts, like elderly people who are more housebound when ice conditions are really poor or bad on sidewalks. It goes on and on. We could talk about all of the interconnected impacts of climate change. But what was really most interesting to me was the mental and emotional impacts for people across the spectrum, but I was looking specifically at people who live close to the land. So I was talking to trappers, hunters, farmers, herbalists, and I can share from my own personal experience, I have felt anxiety and distress at the changes that I see here in Duluth. I was born and raised in Duluth, have gone on to live in lots of other places and traveled to other places, but came back recently and have seen the increased temperature of Lake Superior, for example, the warmer, less predictable winters, and it makes me anxious, and I know I'm not the only person in my life that is anxious because of that. And the people that I spoke with who live even closer to the land, in the bush, in really rural communities in Ontario, had a range of emotions and kind of mental health impacts of these climate-related changes. I talked to someone who was a trapper in Nipigon, which is a small community north of Thunder Bay, Ontario. And he was saying that he has a trap line, he hunts sea fishes, he's an Indigenous person, and he said that he would go outside his trapper's cabin and see plants and how they've migrated or changed over time. You know, he was really accustomed to seeing Labrador tea in one place, or to seeing other kinds of berries and cranberries in other places. And when those changed, it wasn't just that they changed and so he no longer was able to practice the foraging or activities that he did in the past. It also triggered this sense of uneasiness, like a lack of control and hopelessness, and not just knowing that those plants had disappeared from that place, but not knowing what the future would hold, or what would happen to the place that he called home. And I think that those are very relatable. They're disproportionate impacts, I believe, on Indigenous versus settler people, but they are experiences that many of us have and can share with one another. And there's not a lot of work or conversation about the mental and emotional effects of climate change. I think it's really, really important, both that we kind of get to a point where we are not just in grief and anxiety, but to get us to a point where we can move towards collective actions. I think we need to do the work of understanding and unpacking those emotions and those mental health impacts before we're able to act collectively as a society to make change. And part of that, I think, is really recognizing this relationship, that we are interconnected with the natural world, that there is not humanity versus nature, that we are all connected to one another.